Yeah, thanks again, Dave. Week number two. Yeah. This week we are importing and manipulating media. I read that off the back of the room. But Dave filled me in. So yeah, should be interesting. I got a little sneak peek when Dave was setting up earlier. Looks cool, some flying bananas and who knows what else. This little guy bouncing around. So yeah, thanks so much for coming through. This week, we've actually got a discussion panel happening tomorrow for an upcoming Fringe show that we've got on that's, it's like an educational VR experience talking about narrative and the narrative power in relation to mental health. So they're doing like a bit of a tech demo and there's some people from the uni talking. If that's of interest to you, come on down. That's tomorrow from 5 again. Just squeezing that in before Fringe starts. And then we've got a couple more weeks of Dave. And then our first international guests as part of Lab Rats, the Elsewhere in India show. There'll be some more info floating around on that one, but some really interesting artists from India who present sort of a speculative Indo-futurist view of India and Indian culture set like 100 years in the future. So yeah, it's kind of like music performance, live performance, and live visuals mixing like gaming engines, AI, and like their own animations. So that'll be a cool show, but they're going to talk about like everything that's gone into that. And they've toured that. They're based out of India, and it's uses a lot of like local musicians and artists that they've worked with throughout southern India, but they've performed it all over the world. So that'll be an interesting one. Keep your eyes peeled. But anyway, I'll hand it over to Dave. Thanks to Lumo for sponsoring. There's water over there and bathrooms behind the curtain if you need. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Lewis. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Did anyone not get the recording emailed out from last week? Or is that all good? Did not receive? Okay, so if you registered for this week, should receive that, and it will be, all the recordings will be going up in the same YouTube playlist, so they'll all be there. And yeah, just to check that you had to register for each of the 4 sessions separately, in case anyone hasn't done that yet. Cool, yeah, this is what we're going to be doing today. But I thought first, I realized, talking to Lewis after last week, I realized I didn't introduce myself really properly last week. I kind of know most people here, but to the people that I don't know, I've got a couple projects that I'll showing kind of some stuff that I've done using Touchdesigner. So I'll just play these videos and talk about it a bit to give you guys an idea of the kind of thing that I do and use it for. So this was a project that I did towards the end of last year. It was a collaboration with the Adelaide Baroque Orchestra, and they kind of hit me up and they were like, we want to do this performance of this big guitar, the big lute, the mega lute. How good is it? Yeah, it's like we want to do this performance and have some sort of projection / lighting element, and kind of gave me the music, like showed me the pieces that they were going to be performing, and it was around a narrative that was written by an author who was kind of a researcher on the time that the music was composed and had this narrative to the whole performance. So it was like kind of responding to a narrative, kind of responding to the music and making things around that. And this was, all using Touchdesigner. Some elements of this are like pre-rendered Blender animations, and some of it is live generated audio reactive stuff. And this is like live AI generated stable diffusion imagery. So I'm creating an image, or like kind of basically abstract images using the ramps, like a lot of ramps and animation like we were doing last week, and then feeding that into an AI image generator, which is then transforming the input image live to kind of create this weird image texture over the top. And all of this was receiving a audio feed, which I was using to drive animation, and I was operating it using a MIDI controller. So it was kind of basically performing the visuals like they're an instrument along with the orchestra. And like a lot of things, it's like just layering up really simple things until they get to a point of complexity. So this is like, what we're looking at here is like 2 videos and a 3D space with a line that was just moving, triggered by the audio coming in through a microphone. And then I've got a spotlight on the performers that I created in Touchdesigner, and it was just a yellow circle that I could kind of change the colours of, change the size of, and spotlight different performers at different times. But yeah, kind of using the projection for visuals as well as lighting. But yeah, that was a fun one. And then the other one that I have here is a kind of sculptural interactive artwork that I made late last year, using a lot of previous work of mine. So this is what we'll get to in week 4, is using this kind of 3-dimensional space in Touchdesigner. So this is loading in a lot of 3D assets from previous work of mine, and then I'm wrapping image textures from my previous painting and image-based works onto the 3D objects. And then the camera feed is coming in and it's registering that the person is standing in front of the artwork, and then I'm using that signal that there's a person there to trigger a change in state of the movement of the artwork. And this is all, powered by a kind of random movement and constantly generated changing locations of the objects. Those are, just kind of a couple modes of Touchdesigner artwork outputs to give an idea. And now let's get on with the lesson. How many people put a hand up if you managed to open Touchdesigner during the week and have a play with it? Nice. So I reckon we'll start. This is something like what we're going to try and aim for as an end product today, maybe. Oh, my camera keeps going off. I'll show you what this does. So this is what we might aim for, just a few different techniques and kind of things laid on top of each other to make a complex scene, but we'll start simple. So get rid of that. So, does everyone have a piece of media that they want to use today as well? Did everyone bring that? Not a big deal if you didn't. That can be a video or an image, or ideally a video and an image, or you can download something, or we can use your camera input or whatever. Another thing as well, so has everyone got Touchdesigner open? Everyone should have a new project open, and then I'll show how to kind of set yourself up. Just some kind of good habits to get into in terms of file management in Touchdesigner. So if you open a new project and you want to save it, so instead of just going Command S and saving the file in somewhere, I always save it by creating a project folder. So if you hit that, and if you go here, you can choose wherever you want to save it. So this is, so if I go I want to save my project folder in here, it automatically creates a series of folders that you can put media in to use in the project, and it will make it a lot easier for your Touchdesigner project to find the media. So it's just kind of good habit to get into when you're saving stuff. So you can, title your thing and then just go create, and that will save your file for you. And then another good habit to get into is creating a kind of really top-level resolution setter is what I do. I use a constant for this kind of at every project, and then use this to control the like resolution or aspect of different things as we go on. So let's make that the first thing that we make is a constant. And does everyone remember, we do a double click to bring up the operator dialogues or hit tab. So I'm going to make a constant. And then I'm going to go into common over here. And then resolution, set it to 1920 by 1080. But for you guys, because you're on the non-commercial, you'd probably better to go with 1280 by 720. And then the next thing that we're going to make, which is your main tool for bringing any kind of images or video from outside in, is going to be a movie file in top. And by default, this will be a banana. And what I can do here is so that will just be whatever the input is. But if this file that I'm bringing in is a different resolution to whatever I want the output of my project to be, so it's like most of the time you'll be making something that's 1920 by 1080 if you want to put it on a TV or a projector or whatever. But sometimes you might make something and then it wants to go on a big long screen like this. And rather than having to go into every single element and manually change the resolution and the shape, you can reference things throughout. So I'm going to go back to my constant here and go to the resolution and go copy parameter. And then on a fit, so a fit is pretty powerful for like resizing and adjusting your kind of size and shape of anything that you have going on. And I'm going to paste reference here. So then, so from the constant, which I'll say, I'm going to rename this here to be my project res. And then go to the common tab on your project res constant, copy parameter, right click, copy parameter, and then over to the resolution on the fit in the common tab and paste reference. And so then if I have like, say, I don't know, in a week's time, and I've been working on my project this whole time, and then I've got all this different stuff going on, and then I want to show it in the lab, I can just come back here and go change the project resolution to be really long, and then it will just change everything that I'm working on, which is, kind of good habit to get into and time saver for future things. So we've got banana being fit to what our resolution is, and then another tool that we're going to use later on and is pretty fun to play with is a displace. So I'm going to put that after here, and the displace has 2 inputs and it has a red X. So that tells me I need to have something else going into the second input. And for now, let's make that a noise. Actually, let's make it a ramp. And I'm going to just make this a stripe in the middle of my screen. And I'm going to make, let's just see what that does when we connect it. So that's sending it crazy. Let's make that a bit less powerful. Let's make it 0.01 on the displace weight. Maybe a bit more than that. Let's say 0.15. So that's kind of warping kind of in the shape of what our ramp going into it is. So if we move this around, you can see how it's affecting it. So how this works basically is it uses the values of the colors going into the displace to shift the pixels basically. And if we change the blacks, I'm going to make it middle gray. So I'm going to change all of this to 0.5. So it's which in the displace means no change. So we'll just, yeah, everything where the gray is going to be not moved by the displace. And then I think this is how this works, is it kind of goes like color does different things. So the way the displace works is it uses red and green channels to offset it in vertical or horizontal directions. Is your displace weight number, what's that set to? Yeah, so if you set that to 0.15, yeah. So there's a couple different, what kind of getting a feel for like how it works, and then you can, if you can wrap your head around like how it works and what it's doing inside here, it will make it easier to kind of think and problem solve things later on, because like you can plug anything in here and it will make it do wibbly wobblies, but yeah, it's kind of good to like understand how it's working. So let's animate this ramp. So what we did last time, constant, and a little trick is if you hold down shift when you're adding multiple things, you can just do it in one. So I'm going to do constant, then speed, then null, and it will drop them in as a chain. And I'm going to make this move. And then I'm going to send this moving number to the phase of the ramp. And I'm going to make this big so you guys can see. So to connect our numbers again, I'll just do that again. So we've got chops down here, and to be able to talk between tops and chops, we have to reference the parameters. So I go to my null chop and I hit the cross in the bottom right to make it active. And then this lets me interact directly with the number that's living in here. And then I select the ramp and go, I want to drag this, just click and drag this over to phase, because this is the number that I want to be moving. So we can see here that having the color going into the displace being green makes it move up and down, and then if I change this to red, it will make it move left and right. And then if I make it white, it should make it move kind of diagonally because it's going up and down, left and right at the same time. And then the other, you can kind of get a feel for these things by just playing around with the numbers as well. And in the displace, this is X and Y being left and right, up and down. So if I set the displace weight to 0 on the Y parameter, it's not going to go up and down anymore. And if I crank it up on the X parameter, it's going to go left and right more than it was before. And then if I make it smaller again, it's just going to be a little wiggles. Does that make sense? Any questions? Are we there? Yeah. Have you got the phase moving on your ramp?
No, it just says gone red.
Gone red. If you click on the phase and just like delete whatever's in here, you can reset, or you can like right click and go reset parameter to just undo everything. And then just try and drag it in again and go chop reference. Yeah. All right, if anyone else missed the copy and paste of the resolution, I'll just do that again. Where did my thingy go? That's weird. So yeah, if you need it, if anything goes weird and you need to undo it, you can click on anything and hit the reset parameter here, right click, reset parameter. So we've got this and it's, yeah, at the moment the fit comes in at 256 resolution, and I go back to the constant project res, common resolution, right click on the resolution, copy parameter, and then back to the fit, click on the resolution, right click on the resolution, paste reference. So right click on resolution, does it come up with this menu? Yeah, so if you're a constant, in top. So constant top, and then you can manually set the resolution of the constant. Maybe I'll come have a look at that after. We'll power through the next section and then I can come help. All right, so for the next bit, let's bring in our video. So you can just do that by either searching it on the movie file in, or you can just drag in stuff. So what have I'm gonna do this video. It's just an MP4 video of a previous work that I've made, and just drag that in from the Finder, and it will come in automatically as a movie file in top. And I'm going to put a null at the end of the network here so we can see, as we make adjustments to the network, we can see what we're doing, and hit the blue dot on the null to make it appear in the background. And then let's do the first thing we put in here is going to be a displace again. So we're basically just going to do with our video what we just did with the banana. So I'm going to do a displace and then a ramp. And put that in there. I'm going to turn down the displace weight to 0.1, 0.1. And I'm also going to set the extend on the displace to be mirror. Has everyone got those settings? And next, to animate this ramp, I'm going to grab and copy and paste the constant speed null up here. And all of these things, there's kind of 100 different ways you could do the same things that I'm doing here, but I'm just kind of showing my habits that I've formed and just the way that I like to do things now. So I'm going to drag this again, going to reference this speed. This moving number, going to reference it in the phase of the ramp to make this ramp move. And then that's going to go like this. And then let's make this a bit more interesting. I'm going to flip it to vertical. So we're going up and down. And then I think I want to have, let's make this not adjust the image. So I'm going to make that a 0.5 grey, and then I'm going to put in a green and a red. And you guys, you can make this. It doesn't really matter. You can make this whatever colours you want. And yeah, a lot of things you can just fiddle around with anything that you can fiddle with to get a feeling for what things are capable of doing. So I might make the period a little bit smaller there so that we've got some smaller stripes. And then I'm going to turn down this displace weight a little bit more as well. And what I'm going to do next is this is a pretty kind of like subtle effect, but can be fun sometimes if you're, playing with video things and just to get a different feeling. I'm going to put in a channel mix. This is called. I'm just going to do that again. So I'm going to right click at the end of this so it gets inserted into the network, and I'm going to drop a channel mix. Yeah, after the displace. And so the channel mix here, this allows us to basically manipulate the different color channels in the image. So you can like bump up or down each of the red, green, blue, and alpha channels that the image is made up of. So what I'm going to do is make 3 channel mixes. So I'm just going to grab this, Command C, Command V, Command V. So I got 3. And I'm going to make one of them red, one of them green, and one of them blue. So each of these is, this is kind of inputs and outputs. So each of these 4 channels here correspond to like red, green, blue, and alpha values of the input image. And basically the numbers that I'm putting in here is telling telling the image what to put out the other side, or like how to transform the image. So I'm saying for the red that's coming into this channel mix here, I want to put out zero anything red, 0 greens, and for the blue that's coming in, I want to put out exactly the same amount of blue that is coming in, I want to put out the other side. So that basically splits our image into red, green, blue. And then I'm going to make a composite and combine our layers back together again by linking these all up. And then I'm going to switch my composite operator to add. So it adds the layers back together again, stacks them on top of each other, adding up the color values, which will bring us back to our original image. But what that has done is allows us to individually manipulate the separate color channels. So if I then put in like a transform after the red, and you can do, yeah, it doesn't matter, you can do this on anything, or you can do any of the different operators in here. But if I put in a transform and then I move just the red layer, can get like this kind of effect. And I'm going to set this tile to repeat as well. And then maybe let's make a blur on the green and see what that looks like. Is that fun? If you hit the space bar, it pauses, which I do that so many times, where you're just like, what have I done? And you just like accidentally hit the space bar. And then maybe on the blue, let's put in a displace here again and say, I like this kind of horizontal, kind of VHS-y, kind of TV-ish vibes, and say I want to keep going with the horizontal distortion. So I'm going to make a, that's not a displace, make a displace. And then put this noise into this displace. And then let's say I only want this one to go left and right. So I'm going to make the Y value on the displace 0. And I'm going to make, oh, that's not the right one. Displace weight 0. And I'm going to make this a different shape as well. So when you put in the noise, you can kind of, the noise is pretty powerful. There's a lot of like movement that you can do in these, just like messing around with the parameters in noise, and make a lot of different kind of textures and like vibes just within these operations. And you can also transform the shape of the noise itself. So if I want this to go more left and right, let's make it smaller here. And then bigger here to squish it down. And then I'm going to make this a lot less powerful here as well. And then maybe I want to animate this noise, which I generally animate through the Z operator of the translate. So I'm going to grab this. I'm just going to use the same null operator here that is moving this ramp, and use it to move the noise. So I'm going to drag this over to there. So that's moving slowly now. Are we lost? Are we missing anything key? Where did we get lost? Way back. Okay, so yeah, if we've got them all separated, I've added them together with a composite. So if we remember from last week, the composite is basically allows us to layer any infinite amount of inputs into the one input here, and they all get stacked up. And then you can choose what method it uses to stack up the layers in the operation drop-down inside your composite top. Which, yeah, if you make it multiply, it won't work. And the other fun thing you can do here is you can do a preview, and this will show you like all the different, this is basically all the different compositing methods laid out. But what we want for this purpose is to add them together. Because what we've done here is basically broken them apart, and then we want to just add them back on top of each other. Yeah. Mm. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. What do you want to put on the background? Maybe we can come play on the background later. What I want to do as well here for our next step, so my video is a square. I don't know if your video is a square, but I'm going to make my thing fit what our total project resolution is. So I'm going to put a fit after this comp here and go back to the project res, copy parameter, and go to the fit and paste my reference into the fit resolution. And that leaves us the transparent background grid on the fit right now. And what the fit does, if I look at what the fit can do here, it's set to fit best by default, but if I go fill, it will automatically fill the whole fit operator. And then what I would put after this is a transform. So this is stretched out. I want to transform it so that it is squished back to look nice. And transform, if I change the scale on the transform, say it's 1 right now, and I want it to be smaller on the x-axis only. And I go, okay, that looks about normal. And then if I go to the tile tab on the transform, I can say, instead of leaving it as 0 alpha on the sides here, I want to mirror again, and that will fill in the edges. Has everyone got something going on? So the null at the end is what my background is. So I've put the null and then hit the blue dot so that I can kind of see big what it is that I'm working on without having to zoom into all the little things to see what they do each time. All right, so this next section, I'm going to show how we would bring in another element here. So if everyone's got just something, here's a place where we can dive back in and start a new little network underneath here, and then we'll join up. So I'm going to go, what did I have? And as well, so I've got all of this stuff just dragged into my folders here. So this is my project folder, and I've got like videos in here that I might use, and I've just grabbed a few images and I've put them in my image folder here, so Touchdesigner knows where they are easily. but I'm going to grab, let's do a different one. Let's do this. So we'll do, if you have a image like I had at the start, where I had an image on a transparent background, that will look nice for this. But if you don't have an image with a PNG background, there's a few different ways you can kind of create something that is floating on its own, or like different ways that you can edit and manipulate images like directly inside of Touchdesigner. But I'll show you an easy way to make a little nugget that we can play with for this purposes, and then we can, I can come help and play around with different ways after this. So I've just got an image. I'm going to put in a multiply after this, and then I might make a circle. And then if I drop that in here, now that's distorted the image a bit as well. So we can see how that's distorted because the circle comes in at pretty low resolution. So what I will do after both of these, so they're both the same resolution when they cross over with each other, I'm going to put in a fit and paste reference, because my resolution parameter is still in the clipboard. And then I'm going to put in a fit here and do the same and paste reference. So now the image isn't distorted and the circle is nice high resolution. Or not actually, it's a little bit pixelated. I'll just do it over here instead. That's a smarter thing to do. And now I'll make this a bit smaller by changing the radius of the circle so it fits inside our bounds. So now we've got a circle with some imagery in it that we can use and play with to do whatever we want. And what I'm going to do is, let's just join these up again so we can see what it's going to do. And then we can start making the circle, our circle image move around. So I'm going to put in a composite into the original network, so we'll see it pop up on the background when we join them. And I'm going to make this over, composite with over operation, and then I'm going to join the multiply up here. And now that doesn't show up because you can see in here this shows the order that the inputs are interacting with each other. So I've got the transform, which this is my transform, sitting on top of the multiplier. So if you just hit the arrow here, it will sit on top. So that just like bumps it up the hierarchy. Now, what do we want to do? Let's animate this thing. Now, that circle is too big for my tastes, so I'm going to put in a transform and bring the scale down to like this. And then maybe I want the background to be a bit darker as well. Level. Have we used a level yet? I don't think we have. Maybe in the feedback. But level is a pretty powerful operator. If I say I want to make the background look different, I just want it to be a bit darker, I'm going to put a level before the composite so it will only affect the background image that's coming in. And then I can just bring down the brightness here. So it's, yeah, it's still there and it's still able to be played with later on. But we'll just make it look a bit nicer for now. And then I'm going to put back to our circle, I'm going to put another transform after this, which we can use. So I've used this one for adjusting the scale, and I'm going to use this one to animate and make it move. And this will be similar to how we created the moving mouse thing last week. So I can move this around and see if I want it to bounce like a DVD screensaver. We want it to be from negative 0.5 to 0.5, or maybe if I want it to hit the edges, we can say negative 0.34, negative 0.34. And if anyone remembers how we did this last time, it was a LFO into a math chop, back in the green chops now, to make numbers to drive animation. Ooh. LFO math null. And then let's drag this reference, drag this number over to the translate to see what we're doing. And that tells me it's too big, so we need to adjust our math. So at the moment we're going from negative 1 to 1, and we want it to be from negative 0.34 to 0.34. Oh no, I'm wrong. I want it to be a different number. If we're going x, we want it to be 0.4, 0.4. And I'm going to adjust the frequency of the LFO. If we go back to the start LFO, I'm going to adjust this frequency to make it slower. Maybe 0.3. And what I want as well is, instead of it slowing down when it gets to the edges, I want it to just be moving and change quickly so it looks more like a bounce. And that is, you can change that in the types of waves that we're working with here. So these can just play around with them to see what the different ones do as well. But what we want for this purpose is a triangle. So it just kind of goes up, instead of curving, it just goes directly up and down. And then we want to copy and paste this. So drag with my right click to select this whole little network here, and then copy and paste to make another one for my Y movement. And I'm going to drag this onto the Y translate on the transform. And then what I can do, so that this just isn't going in the same place over and over, I like to just set them to be slightly different frequencies, so it bounces a bit more randomly. And then I'm going to change these numbers as well. So changing the scale of the math chop so that my circle goes straight to the edges. I might make this go a little bit further to the left and right as well, so it's touching the edges. Let's make this a bit slower. Are we with it? Do you want me to go back a bit? Yeah? Where do we get lost? Yeah. Yeah, so let's try and lock down this little network. So I'll run through what I've done again. So we drop in the image, which you can just drag in your image from your Finder or whatever. And then I've got a fit here, so I'm setting the resolution of my image to be my overall project resolution, which I did by copying the parameter from up here. Right click, copy parameter. And then right click, paste reference onto my fit resolution. And then after the fit, I put in a multiplier, which basically does the same thing as a composite, but less. So it's a little bit easier to use. And I have the image going into the top input of my multiplier. And then the bottom input of the multiplier, I have a circle, which I created just a white circle. And I also set the circle to be the same resolution as the total project resolution in the same way by the right click, paste reference. And then I adjusted the circle radius to be, 0.24, 0.24 height and width values, which I just, again, hold down, click, and then drag left and right to be able to drag the scale numbers and see what I think feels good. And then after the multiply, I put in this transform, which I dropped down the scale just to make the total object, circle object that we're now playing with, make it smaller to bounce it around in the scene. And then after that, I put in another transform, which I will use to adjust the translate parameters. A wire, if you've got a wire that you don't want anymore, if you hover over it and it turns yellow, you can right click, disconnect. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah. Yeah. So you get the speed to move by putting a value into the constant. So you set the value of the constant. So if I've got a constant, you got it? Yeah. Yeah. Circle over, I mean back here where we've got the circle and the image coming together the first time. Yeah, so over puts them, just sits them right on top of each other. If you set the composite to multiply, it will, so it will use everything that's white in the multiply image and leave behind the rest that's alpha. So if you've got a composite here, you can just set it to multiply, or I've just got a multiply top, is what I'm using here. I'll show you. So you can do the same thing with a composite. If I drop a composite and drag the fit into the composite. And then if I drag the circle into the composite, you see that? It's because by default it's set to multiply. But if I have it set to over, and it's like that, my image is going to sit on top. And if I switch the order, the circle is going to sit on top. Oh, circle like over here where it composites. So this one you want it to be over, but have you got the... Oh, that's weird. I'll come have a look in a minute. All right, let's do one more tool that we can play with that's pretty powerful, just so we can be aware, is the video device in top. And usually, by default, this should be a webcam. So the video device in is how you can kind of access your live camera feed, or basically any video input that you can connect to the computer can be accessed through this. So if you have external webcams or cameras or whatever, it's basically all through here. And I'm just going to switch this out here. Yeah. So you could do the same thing with the video device as you're doing with the pre-recorded video. And I did have some other tricky stuff on this one. Which, do we want to go through that, or should we just come around and catch everyone up first? All right. Does anyone have any questions or bits they would like to share, and or any specific parts that I should run through again for everyone? Where are we stuck? Circle's not moving. Have you got some LFO action happening? So, if you've got these, you want to connect it by referencing this parameter of the translate in the transform top to the numbers here. So I'm going to turn these off. So if they're just like that, and then I'm going to make these chops active, and then I'm going to say, if this is my X parameter going left and right, I'm going to drag this onto the X translate option. And then if this is my Y parameter, I'm going to click and drag from the active chop over to my Y translate parameter. Is that doing it? Yeah. Nice. And then what I might do here as well is just one last thing if we want to try, is if we make this rotate. So we did the rotation last week using a speed, but I'm going to show another way that you can do the same thing with an LFO. So I'm going to put an LFO on here, and I'm going to edit the first transform where all I've done here is the scale, and if I change the rotation, it's not going to mess with our image too much, so I know that I can edit the rotation on this top without messing everything else up. So I've got an LFO, I'm going to make a math. And then a null. And I'm going to reference this null to the rotation value in this transform, and I can see that it's not moving very much because we're only going between -1 and 1, where rotation is between 0 and 360. So I can just make it go 0 to 360. So that's spinning back and forth, and the next thing I'm going to do is change the type of wave that we're working with from being a sine wave to a ramp. So it goes up and then starts again. So it goes 0 to 1 and then restarts. And I'm going to make that a bit slower as well.
My circle just doesn't really bounce on the edges very nicely.
So where you would fiddle with that is in the math here. So if I say, how's mine look? Mine's pretty good on the X, but it's not quite hitting. If I wanted to go a little bit further in, I would say at the moment it's in the math, I'm saying from -1 to 1 is being remapped to -0.42 to 0.42, and if I make that -0.45 and 0.45, see how it goes a little bit further into the borders now? Yeah. And maybe I want mine to go further at the top and bottom as well, so I'll change it to -0.4 and 0.4. So that kind of brings us to the end of our hour. If you have got this under control, I'd say just you can experiment with using like different things as your displace input. Like you can use a noise can be fun. And also using like low resolution things. So you could put a limit top and just play around with that, and you can kind of basically pixelate what the input image is doing. Or you can also put a limit on your actual video and then play with different parameters here, and then that will give it different effects. Yeah, and you might try like animating the image coming in here. So maybe we want it to be like moving from left to right or something. But yeah, hopefully this has been explanation of a few kind of simple tools that we can get our heads around tonight. And then a lot of things is just like experimenting within these parameters or just playing around with different stuff that you can do inside of the simple tools, and then just layering things on top of each other. Until you get something that is interesting. And then once you're kind of comfortable with the tools and get a feel for it, then it's kind of being able to go, I want something that looks like this, and then be able to make that thing. But yeah, I'll pop around, put your hand up if you're feeling like stuck and can't do anything, and I'll come help you out first. Otherwise, I'll just float around and kind of help people if you want to make something specific or are having trouble with anything. And yeah, ask your neighbours for help as well.